this first episode of the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, CSBAG, where we are looking at the national budget, and we're trying to see how this budget relates to the needs and aspirations of Ugandans, so to speak, the common man. And to start off, I have Julius Mukunda. Julius is the Executive Director of CSBAG and is going to help us really understand some of these aspects. And I will be your host, Charles Boji. Those in the room, I have to welcome you as well, and I have to mention right from the beginning that we're going to have a number of people who are going to be watching us online.
Yes, sir.
Julius, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Charles. Long time.
Indeed. Now, of course, in order to do justice to the discussion, there's no way we can delve into the 2024-2025 financial year budget before looking at the performance of the concluding financial year budget, that is 2023-2024. What are your quick thoughts about the performance of that budget?
Of course, we haven't finished it, but the figures we have for as of December 2023 is that revenue shortfall of around 800 billion against the target. Although in terms of corrections, they had actually increased it by 12%. So, but in terms of target, we still had a shortfall of, in terms of revenue of Uganda Revenue Authority only, around 800 billion. But if you look at the whole expected revenue to come and other revenue streams, borrowing, domestic, both domestic and external, and also grants, we had a shortfall of around 2 trillion to cover, which therefore means that we must find this money somewhere else, this shortfall was financed through borrowing from the domestic banks. So, in terms of the expenditure, as of the end of June of December 2023, government of Uganda had released around 14 trillion to be spent, but unfortunately only 11 trillion had been used. And that shows you the absorption capacity of our agencies to utilize even their variable sources. So what we are looking at now is that we need some miracle that the next few months or days we can hit the revenue target. That's number one, but also that agencies can up their games in terms of spending the money that has been allocated to them. Because if they don't, a number of things, we don't provide the service to our citizens, but also the commitments we have, even the NDP, might not be achieved.
I hear you.
Yes.
Quite interesting, and you raise quite a number of critical issues then there. One of them is that as of December, we had a shortfall or a deficit of about 2 trillion. And I don't know whether this stretch, December to June, we're able to cover that. But to stretch it a little to the new financial budget, we're looking at a 72 trillion budget from a 52 trillion budget.
Yes.
How do you reconcile those two realities?
Yeah, 72 definitely is a very ambitious budget. And I mean, it is scaring that you shift 20 trillion Ugandan shillings all of the sudden within the financial year. That's quite huge.
Yeah.
However, I think the ambitiousness probably is stemming from the ambitiousness of government, where they want to achieve their 10 growth, they call it a 10-digit growth for target for the economic growth that they want. They want to increase our GDP 10 times. However, is that you can be ambitious, but I think there are a number of things you need to put in place to that. Otherwise, you end up, they say that you can have too much money and it kills you. So 72 trillion, yes, but I think that what Ugandans need to understand is that this 72 trillion is not going to translate into services that we expect the 72 trillion, because out of that, I think we're only going to be able to spend 34 trillion. And it indicates that more than half of the budget is reserved for something else. And to Ugandans, that something else is called debt servicing. So it really tells you how we are beginning to, how debt is beginning to affect us. Yeah. And I think for me, the question is, the whole thing about this debt servicing would not be worrying us if two things were answered very affirmatively. And that is, one, how we contract these loans, the process of contracting the loans. in our assessment as CSBAG, we feel that these loans, we rush to get them when we are not ready. And the second one is our ability to absorb these particular monies. We are finding some very disturbing numbers. That 14.4 trillion of loans are not disbursed. They are called undisbursed loans, which means that we rushed to sign the agreement, but forgot to fulfill conditions on how these loans should be applied. So they are up there, 14.4 undisbursed. So the major issues I think we can understand about the 72 trillion budget. So we have that debt part, but we also have the 34 trillion that is there on how this how 34 million is going to translate into our service delivery. It could also be a discussion. Yes. But maybe also we can look at where does this money go. We see sometimes also it's important to understand where the money goes. Because what we are finding out, for example, is that a big chunk of the money is staying at the central. Only 5 trillion is being dispersed at the local government level. So that could be another way you want to look at it, see how this 72 is going to be allocated. Around 5 trillion is for local governments. How many local governments do we have? So each local government is going to take how much? So that's an area you want to look out for. But fundamentally, there are things in the budget that you want also to be proud about. Yeah. I mean, for example, is that we have the famous PDM. And for us to still believe that PDM, if we do it correctly, could be a transformative program. And it's high time now, because at first we said this was a small baby, it is growing, let us not hit it so much, but I think it's right now to begin that this baby, at this particular moment, should be running. Otherwise, we're going to consider this baby stunted, or the baby is lacking in nutrition, has some incurable disease, because at this particular moment, the baby should be running up, and we shouldn't be having problems of ghost workers, ghost circles, limited, poor disbursement. We should be having those things. So yeah, PDM is a good thing, and 1 million has been allocated to it. We've been suffering with the seed input, fake inputs. We are seeing government committing itself around 60 billion with the Ministry of Agriculture, where they are likely to put money for seed certification. So we believe that's good money to spend. Money for anti-tick vaccine with the NARO. You know how the cattle corridor has been suffering with ticks. Yeah. Of late they tell us that ticks, the kind of acaricide we are using actually is it fattens the ticks. They don't fall off. So there are some areas. We see SGR now, right now, government has said, let's do it. So they are trying to buy the right of way. So we have seen the money for KCCA, for potholes. We are hoping this time around they won't really sit on the money, because we know they are sitting on the World Bank loan since March last year, which they have not even utilized for the same purpose. So yeah, those are some of the things that we can definitely look at.
Great. Of course, before we delve a little deeper on the issue of date, related to that, I wanted us to pay a bit of attention on the issue of absorption, because I can see it's a very, very big problem, considering the fact that the services are needed on the ground. On the other part, we are paying interest on that debt.
Yes.
Which means it actually erodes the value that the budget will be able to deliver. How do we move forward? If you are, let's say, so to speak, the decision maker, where would you start, to deal with the problem of debt absorption?
I think that we don't really need rocket science. One of the things that is required for us is we call it fiscal discipline. And this is whereby every civil servant is giving targets. Because really you can't be on a project that should have closed 5 years ago. 10 years down the road, you are still running the project and you are still the same accounting officer. That's about fiscal discipline. What I've also realized, because if that's there, then we have better people who can be able to implement these projects on time and on budget. I have also witnessed, I think, cases whereby there is a rush in the preparation of these particular loans. Not even loans, but even our own projects. If you could just look through the core agenda, the 14 trillion core agenda of government, and you see the things they want to do immediately. Sometimes I don't even want to get worried about them because I know they're likely not to come out. Because you get the money, maybe except for those that are quick to consume, like people's salaries, like we want to pay the cultural leaders. But if you really want to start a stadium in Hoima, I'm sure there's a Kibua stadium, if you want to start those things, there is a lot that needs to be done even before you think about them, like visibility. So sometimes the rashness, lack of preparation to prepare well to implement a project is one of our biggest challenges. The other journal is telling us that 35 of our projects don't have visibility studies.
Yeah. Wow.
That's an indication that you just start a project in the air. You know, like you start, you say, bring money, let's move and see what happens later. But that's not how you run government programs. Right now, we have projects that have, look at Busegampigi Express Highway, look at Kampala Express Highway. This is not because we don't know how to run this project, but these are the loans that were rushed when we didn't know that we should have obstacles along this particular road. So I think we need to have the capacity to first prepare ourselves properly to see how the project is going. Where is the road going to pass? What obstacles are on this road? Who are the people on the road that we should first compensate? So if you don't do that, no company will start a project that you want in time. You know, this famous road of Northern Bypass took 20 years instead of 5 years. Why? Because we're not prepared. Yeah. A stone here, then you first negotiate for another, then a tree there, then you negotiate for another 6 months. Then some people don't want compensation at all, even when you give them all what they don't want. They are like, this land has spirits, so it must stay. But if you never studied how to calculate spiritual value of a property, then it becomes difficult for you to compensate this kind of people. So I think, Chad, these are some of the things. It's not rocket science. I think it can be done. But I think it's not for the weak-hearted.
I hear you. Now, going back to the issue that you mentioned on allocation, and you touched this a little, because my question was the 72 trillion. Do you see it, in terms of its allocation, really speaking to the common person, to the Ugandan, when you look at where most of this allocation is going?
Our understanding, I think, is that no. We are given lip service. And for us, when we say service delivery and productive items, we want to run away from splitting the budget between recurrent and expenditure and recurrent and development. Because it's very misleading, considering given that because of our chart of accounts. For example, you find medicines, supply of medicines is part of the recurrent budget. And the current budget now constitutes around 55% of the entire budget, of the entire 34 appropriated budget, the 34. Around I think 18 trillion, 55%.
Yes.
So you might think that, that is huge. Government is too much of a consumptive nature. But in this particular item, that's when you find their food for soldiers. That's when you find their supply of medicines. That's where you find some key service deliverables, money that we advanced to UDB for loaning the public. Money we advanced to UDB. So you find some of these items are in the recurrent expense, and when you look at it, you find that it's too huge, and you begin to blame, say, no, these guys are too consumptive. But if you turn it around and say productive and unproductive, then you even find some items in the capital budget actually that are not productive, because you are likely to find that in the capital development budget of Uganda, you are likely to find issues like advertisement expenses are likely to be there, welfare and special meals, they are likely to be in development, because for them they look at the project and get the whole project and call it development. But inside that project, there's a hell of recurrent nature of items that are under there. But I want to look at specifically key things which I think government, yes, you did well, but they could have run better, because our if you go to agriculture, for example, I mean, I would really have loved to see heavy investment in our extension services, because you look at PDM, 90% of beneficiaries are going to go to agriculture. And the extension service in this country has been misinterpreted and make it almost non-functional, because extension service in this country is no longer about transferring knowledge. It's about distributing inputs. That is not extension. Extension is about transferring knowledge. How can you grow better? How can you take care of animals better? It's not about bringing seeds and supplying and them around. Them. So you want to see real resources, heavy resources going into that particular area. Our referral hospitals, really, they get around 298 billion. At first I looked at it, I thought probably this is probably only their salary, but that is the total amount of money they're supposed to get. You can't spend that little on a referral hospital. Otherwise, everybody's going to start coming to Murago. If Chirundu cannot treat malaria, then everybody's going to go there.
I hear you. I hear you.
So, yes, we could do better than what we are doing currently.
At the moment.
I would even stop building new roads. I would instead put more money on maintaining the old ones. Because the capacity now to start on these huge projects is extremely very limiting, considering our fiscal space. Because more than half of the entire budget is going for debt servicing. So you can't acquire new loans to do roads, yet the old ones can't function. The traffic jam in Kampala, I mean, it's a mess on its own. So really, for me, those are the areas I would want to throw in more resources, more money.
Thank you, Julius. Now I want to pick your mind on this as well. I know you work quite closely with the grassroots local governments. And I was looking at the call agenda for this financial year's budget. And I'm looking at, because you mentioned a little at the beginning, you know, the fact that we have some of the funds too much at the center. And little trickling down to where actually service delivery happens. And when I look at the Parliamentary Commission, I think they have 110 billion, almost 11 billion if you round it off. Rather 111 billion. Now, local governments in their entirety are receiving just 41 billion. What do you think of that?
I think that's where there is too much politics in distributing resources, and we forget where service delivery is. We have argued with the Ministry of Finance and Parliament that without proper or adequate financing of governments, we are not doing much. In this core agenda, of course, they give them the military money, but even if you look at the entire budget, 72 trillion, and you give these guys only 5 trillion, and this is the place where the ordinary person meets government at the service delivery. So those are some of the expenses actually we would cut out if you are given an opportunity to cut out. Say these are the expenses you want to cut out immediately, because it's not about lack of money in this country, it's about how we allocate resources. So you have 110 billion, and you see that money it's not for any particular purpose for Parliament. That money is to fund members of Parliament who went for a sports gala in Kigali some time back. So they want to refund them for having done that. So for me, really, these are some of the expenses. These are some of the expenses you want to get out of the budget to be able to have extra resources to find those activities that are very critical to you. Look at almost 700 billion we have allocated to day pharmaceuticals. They want to start. For heaven's sake, I think for me is, whereas I support private companies to be bailed out. But you just can't bail people out of a blank check. You must have a criteria so that even a private person in Kotido can say, can I fit in this criteria and I can apply. So it's not about choosing who is, it's about having a proper criteria on how we are funding you, but also how we are recovering the money. Some companies are dead completely. You need to just bury them. Some definitely need some revival and recovery. So you need that part. So there are those expenses in the budget that definitely Parliament, you have that money for day, you have other billions going to Atiak Sugar Factory. Basically, really is that these are things you could tell people that just let's hold on there and first concentrate on one thing and one thing at a go. Because the problems are so many in this country, and you cannot solve them in one day. It's impossible, and that's why we are contracting all these loans, because we have so many things to be done at the same time, but we don't have the money. Now we are borrowing left and right, and because of these borrowings, I mean, recently Moody rating agency downgraded our economy to a B3. A B3 really means that you are a very, very risky country. So something must be done.
And it's a tough one, because it means if you go back to the market to borrow, we might borrow at even higher interest, because we are considered high risk.
I would not worry if they gave us that rate and we are not going to borrow again. But here you are with trillions to borrow in the next coming financial year.
So already it's clearly spelled out.
So if you have 31 trillion to collect and you have a 72 trillion budget, I mean, already you can see that you are signaling the market, I'm coming, and the market is telling you, you are too risky, here is your separate rate that we shall give you. So the waters are really not calm for us.
That's quite interesting. Now, talking about debt, Julius, again, I know if you speak to the local businessman, you know, we all know that government is a major source of employment and business as well, because there are many suppliers to government. And sometimes when we are discussing the debt issue, we tend to focus so much on the foreign debt and forget the domestic areas. And I think it's a big, really, animal in the room, because when we talk about revenue mobilization, and I think finance is now pursuing a domestic revenue mobilization agenda. And they're looking at this person who supplies government and is not yet paid, or is never paid, or is not sure about being paid. I wanted to speak directly to that. How do we tackle that issue so that we improve, you know, that relationship between the local supplier and government? I mean,
to another Ugandan right now, is that our government is not in I don't want to say it's not in a position, but it is very reluctant to pay its suppliers. Because I think our domestic area is around 2.2 trillion, but we keep on allocating 200 million every financial year. And you want to ask yourself, why do you do that? I think basically is that we have our planning is still inadequate to capture all the obligations that we have. That's number one. Because if we had that, then we would have finished paying off our suppliers. The second issue, of course, is that lack of commitment control among our accounting officers. People are still committing government even when they're not supposed to do that. And that leads to corruption and misuse of resources, because people now begin to push for their own tenders to supply things that government doesn't have money. If we are strict on that, if it is found out that you've committed the government against the law, the Public Finance Management Act, you are either removed or you are made to pay for in your pocket. These are the things that can completely be wiped out. But secondly is that when you look at domestic borrowing, I mean, now we are really we are going above 10 trillion. Is that you are going to have less money in our banks right now to be able to lend for on-one lending to the private sector in this country. And we pride ourselves as a country that is for private sector development. So already you are pushing private sector out of business. The loans are very high already, but also they are very limited. The market is very limited. So as you go in, very few companies will be able to get these loans to pay back. And it's a vicious cycle, because even those that have not got credit direct or to close, because you as a government, you're not even paying them to pay back the loans. So you're going to have a very huge non-performing loan portfolio within the financial sector, and which you don't have. So government, number one, needs to really reduce its appetite on domestic borrowing, and they need to do that. To do that requires government to plan 3 years ahead for external borrowing. Because external borrowing, you don't go into the market today and you get money tomorrow. Domestic borrowing, you can do that. It is easy. So government needs to have a 5-year borrowing strategy if they want to make sure that our domestic private sector actually can survive and thrive. 5 years. So negotiation for the loans for this next financial year, you should have finished negotiated them for them last financial year. That's the kind of planning you need. But it won't work. It's going to be very expensive for you to get it, but also it's going to put pressure on the government to spend on those particular items that have come up. So strategy on borrowing is very, 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 very important. And also you signal on the market that these 5 years, this amount of money I want. So who is willing to bring it on board? There is that kind of planning and negotiating. But I think that our biggest change right now is when we are negotiating at the last moment. Like funds for next financial year. When the financial year begins, that's when the doors for negotiation also begins. So that limits our capacity to get the right loans so that we can cushion the private sector. And therefore, at the end of the day, I don't see interest rates in this country going down, for sure. I don't see it.
That's a tough one.
We would have really, by now really we would say, let's get into the figures of below 20 or below 15. I don't think I'm going to get to that because of government and the intended consequences of domestic borrowing and its inability to pay back to create domestic areas.
Great. Now, I want us to move to the area of taxes. Because, I mean, looking at the budget, a bulk of it is supposed to be mobilized through tax income. And I know several pundits have pointed to the fact that in order to raise good money in taxation, you've got to spur economic activity, production, productivity, and all the things that move along with that. Now, I know you've perused through the budget, right from the framework papers and all that. Do you see that spirit of spurring economic activity? Looking at the expenditure priorities, that government has given itself.
I consider for me the current tax proposals as an inconvenience to government and its people. Why do I do that? Because you've gone for the same taxes by just adding on particular rates and maybe reviewing others to be in conformity with the law. We've not seen serious work going into expanding the base. Because the same people who have been paying taxes are the same people who are going to continue paying taxes, except at a higher rate. Because if I was the government, I would not add any tax on fuel. Because fuel has a multiplier effect on increasing the cost of business in this country. You just wait on the first day, you'll see transport is going to increase. Every price in this country is likely to increase, simply because of just 100. Even if you say 200, things will, even if you say 1 shilling, you increase on 1 shilling, there is that speculative within the energy sector that really increases the prices of each and everything. I would not have done that. I would not even have bothered with cement. Because you see, you can't eat it. You can't say, I want to collect rentals, and then you are making construction of rentals expensive. It doesn't add up. You either go for materials for building, so that people say, okay, it's going to be expensive, but the returns are high. Or you forget about the building materials and concentrate on the rentals, so that people can say building is cheaper. But now building is not cheap. Even the rentals are not, the rent you get is also being taxed. So everywhere you pass, it's just taxation, and it discourages business innovation, it discourages business growth. I would not have done that. I like the reduction on our fruits and beverages. That was a small reduction. But there are two things I would have done that would have an impact without inconveniencing the general public, because everybody's agitated. One is that I would look for partnerships to expand my taxes. One is that I know, and we all know, that Uganda Revenue Authority will never in their lifetime man or border posts in this country. It's impossible. They will not do that. It's so expensive. I would therefore go into partnerships with border districts to man those customs, those border posts to collect taxes on behalf of URA. And I also give them a commission. It's a win-win. Local governments are suffering, they want more money, here it is, and URA wants to collect more. They would be able to do that.
Big target.
To stop smuggling. The next partnership I would do again with especially urban centers. With support of USAID, urban centers have got property registers. So local governments go and collect their property rate and come back home. What if URA sits with them and says, okay, a memorandum of understanding, as you are collecting your property tax, please also collect for me rental tax. And this is the arrangement how we are going to share the revenue. Let me tell you, we would increase, currently we are collecting only 10% of the rentals tax. I'm very sure you do that, you would hike that percentage above 50%. You are not going to inconvenience anybody. It means that you are bringing all other people into the taxation bracket. So you really want URA to think beyond the current corrections we are making, to think of how we can be more effective and also bring every other person into the taxation bracket.
Great, great. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I think at this point we will pick your quick comments, suggestions, but mainly questions. So if you have any, you can forward one to Julius. Maybe Julius, as we wait to pick the, Ismail?
Well, I've been looking at the I've been looking at the agenda. I've been looking at the agenda expenditure items.
Yeah.
And they are in excess of 15 items, all each in billions of shillings. Now, if you look at the definition of the word agenda itself, it means a mistake. So there are more than 15 items, all in billions of shillings, and they are all mistakes. They're now trying to be corrected back. What does that speak about our budgeting planning? I know you hinted at that, but to double down on it, what does it speak about how casually, our people were about the planning of the budget? Then, if we also look at the arrears due to suppliers, domestic suppliers, some of them have been in the fixture for the last 6, 7, 8 years or more that have been covering budget. And each time allocation, as rightly said, it's not more than 200 billion. So is that an agenda by probably the planners to constrain the growth of SMEs? Because these are people who give you their goods and services. They employ 2, 3, 4 more people, and you've not paid them for this, or we are not even sure how many of these are actually in business right now. Still, what's the implication of that? Look at the budget and the growth of our economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ismail. I think we'll pick another 3 and then he responds to those. Quick thoughts here.
Thank you very much. I just want to ask a question, which I think is very pertinent. My name is Ronald Oche, and I work here. So, one is we have this very novel expenditure. I've always talked about this severally in the different forums I've been in, and that expenditure is climate change. Okay? And it's one of the, I think it's one of the, actually I don't even think, it's one of the expenditures that are bloating government debt in the recent years. So the thing is, there's an alternative. Different scholars have found alternatives that I think government could also, one, materialize in terms of mobilizing revenues from it, but also it's efficient, which means you can generate as much revenue as possible from it. and that is taxation in carbon taxes. So if probably Julius could advise or comment on how government could probably approach that. One, will be mitigating one, climate change, addressing the climate change issue, but also two, will be cutting down on our expenditure. Three, but also generating more revenue for the government. So if you could just comment on that, I think.
Thank you, Bwana Chen. One more, then we come back to Julius. Oh, we have a question here. You can come in front here and then. Okay.
My name is Sam. To Julius, when we were talking about the PDM, he said that the PDM is allocated 1.77 trillion. But again, when you look into the budget or the minority report, Parliament minority report, there are items which they termed wasteful expenditures. And when you get just five from these wasteful expenditures, their total is 1.85 trillion. And yet the one for the parish government model, which they say is supposed to uplift 39% of Ugandans from subsistence farming to the money economy, we find that these five items are higher than PDM. So I don't know what Julius would say about this, and does he believe that these are really wasteful expenditures, or it is political and it is all environment?
Okay. All right.
Quickly, I think on the core agenda, I think these are some of the things that we don't take seriously, because the law requires you an opportunity to correct a mistake. Maybe you had planned to purchase cows, and you had put each cow at $1 million instead of 100,000. So it allows you to correct that. Substantially change the main document, in this case the budget. So I think core agenda has really been misused in our circumstance, because you cannot have a mistake of 14 trillion. That's out of question. But also core agenda is not supposed to bring new items in the budget. And I think that has been my argument, is that all along we knew we are supposed to pay Bank of Uganda 7.7 trillion. We knew that. Why didn't we budget for it? All along we knew we are supposed to pay our cultural leaders salary. Why did it have to come in the core agenda? All along we knew that we were supposed to spend money on the presidential banana initiative in the Bushenyi. So why? So you see, these items substantially change the main document, which is the budget. But our assessment, I know why, because these items, if they had been put in the main budget, would have gone beyond the ceiling of these sectors, because each sector is given a ceiling. So you rather remove them now, so that an opportunity comes. And opportunity in this current in our financial management, opportunities are majorly two. At the core agenda, now core agenda has been used as an entry point, but also at supplementary level. I would not be shocked if the next supplementary budget was going to have these items that are actually in the core agenda. So we have misused it, and I think partly is to use some of the frameworks that we have in this country, because we have what we call PEFA. It's a global public finance expenditure management framework that evaluates the way government allocates or allocates resources. So I believe this time around, this is going to be a very serious issue in terms of in the budget process itself. The confidence you put, the confidence and trust you put in the budget process, because that's a very key and also very very important. In fact, in my argument, I have said this core agenda is the result of the failure of Parliament to execute its mandate. You cannot be a Parliament and you are given to pass a 14 trillion budget in an hour. That is fundamentally wrong. It is important. Even some members of Parliament like ourselves had not internalized what the 14 trillion was about. They just pass it like that. So Parliament, I think, first of all, is that their job to check the executive at this time around, they were inadequate in that particular area. They would have saved us, because it was a matter of saying, please take it back and bring it, all the items, bring them in the next financial year budget. And it would have worked around. For me, to the suppliers, I think, please be aware of supplying government at this particular level, because government has a very bad record of paying back to its domestic suppliers. In terms of external debt, they are very fine. You will never find the government in the wrong books with its creditors, but only the private sector. So be wary on how you are supplying government. And I mean, you really need to see how to reduce your appetite to spend on government, because government, its record shows that it's not good at paying back. But to government, I think for me this is a counter. This is something that is going to affect the agenda of private sector development, because whereas you are putting money to promote private sector, but at the same time you are putting a rug under their feet, so they would never be stable. You are telling them we are capitalizing UDB, UDC, please go and get the money, but very few can pick that money because their cash flow is so bad. The government has not been able to pay them back. So really, government needs to come out and see how to address the question of domestic areas. The only issue I have with domestic areas are majorly the court fines and fees, whereby a reckless accounting officer fires people in office. They go to court and they win their case very immediately. And these courts give a substantial amount of rewards, 200 million, 500 million, all that. I think for me it's high time we decide and say, if you make a reckless decision, you pay personally. Don't make government liable. If you made those, especially those who try so much and forget to follow the advice of the Solicitor General. The Solicitor General advises that please don't do it, and the fellow goes ahead and implements a decision contrary to the Solicitor General's argument. So for me, those ones really should have a personal liability, but not a government liability. Climate finance, I think we still have a long way to go. For me, that's very important. We still have a long way to go. But there are two fundamental things that have been done. One is that we have two budget codes that help us track how government is going to spend money on mitigation and adaptation. I think that's a very good measure. For the first time in this financial year, the National Budget Framework Paper, we're able to assess the climate finance, our budget from a climate finance perspective, and we're not doing well. I think we're below 50%, which was not nice. So the government has started the climate finance unit, the Ministry of Finance. We hope that this could help us develop a proper framework for attracting resources, and maybe it can be able to reduce on the domestic borrowing that we currently have. Somebody asked the PDM and the budget cuts. Actually, the opposition had 5.5 trillion in terms of budget cuts, and this is in line with even what civil societies had done some time back. For us, actually, we're a bit more patient. We had reduced by only 2.5 trillion, which government later on took, and they cut up to 2.1 trillion. So we believe that PDM is not part of the reckless expanding of government, but there are others that should, like I mentioned earlier, that we could actually remove from the budget and remove the 72 trillion Uganda shillings. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Now, before you go back to the audience here, I have some quick thoughts here. I have David Obonyo from Moroto. He's saying Moroto Regional Referral Hospital is running without a fridge in the mortuary. So you can imagine whether the budget for our country, or where the budget for our country is going to.
Yeah.
I think this highlights some of the structural problems that we have at different levels of social service provision. Then I have Agnes Chirabo is saying, Julius, is the tax regime broadening the tax base or deepening it? To me, the tax regime is taxing the same people harder and deeper. I think that's quite interesting, and you touched a bit about it. Yeah,
I mean, we've stagnated at 14% of tax to GDP for a very long time. We have not improved, and the only thing the government is doing is to deepen, add more numbers on the existing taxes. We really need to have a serious conversation on how to broaden tax, and I'm glad that the DRMS, the Domestic Resource Mobilization Strategy, is expiring this financial year. let's sit as a country and discuss about how to raise
Brilliant.
taxes.
Ideally.
Yeah, but also where to spend it. I think that's another one.
The
Okay.
expenditure of that tax is another discussion. Well, I think we can pick another round of questions. I have a couple of colleagues, I think, who have some stuff. Who can help me move the microphone? I think if you have a question, you can come
Just
and
come
stand
in
here.
and just
I'll start with Buana Lukwago here.
Thank you so much. I'm called Kenneth Lukwago. I have just a quick reaction to some of the things that Julius has said. First of all, I'm surprised that he seems to be having a lot of faith in Parliament and the way they handle budget these days. What I've observed that what the members do, they come and sit and vote by acclamation. Very few actually take time to actually even scrutinize the documents that are there. That's why sometimes you find the committee has taken a position and the member is debating it and opposing it on the floor, which clearly shows you that they don't get ample time to actually focus on the budget. And that brings me to the aspect of the budget of Parliament and whether you see some room for reforming the process through which our budget is handled. You know, it's unthinkable that for the sake of Parliament, for the case of Parliament, they only table their budgets, and that's it. From my time of covering Parliament, it was very hard to actually look into their policy statement to be able to understand clearly what is inside their budget. It's like a secret. You never get to understand exactly how much Parliament is allocated and how they spend this money. And probably that's why there's too much money being thrown left, right, and center. Because members of the public, and I'm sure even Julius knows it very well, he has never had a chance to scrutinize the parliamentary budget. And therefore, for me, that's an area of reform. We should have an open budget system, because it's very hard to tell people that it's Parliament that is holding people accountable, and yet it's very hard for members of the public to actually understand how they're spending the money. Then, of course, I'm concerned about the budgeting process. Those days it was very clear. They would pass, the day they read the budget, you would clearly know what the budget's about. But these days, Parliament has to pass the figures first, then the budget speech is made. There's a lot of confusion going back and forth. You know, you hinted on the last minute adjustment of the figures. And for me, it makes me wonder whether the budget process actually still makes sense, you know. As Parliament is sitting, they have like 2 hours to appropriate. Then all of a sudden, the Minister of Finance is showing up and telling us that they have extra funds. At the time, they're even projecting that the economy is not going to do very well. The revenue authority is projecting shortfalls. You know, for them, they are coming back and telling you that we anticipate more funds to come in, and therefore we need to adjust the budget. Does the budget? Do you think the budget process still makes sense, or it's something that we need to look at? Then one of the other areas I've really been concerned with is the issue of donation. You know, you're in a country where you are relying on borrowing. You have shortfalls like the gentleman from, is it Morocco, who has just told us they do not have a fleet. But then you have a president who has a donation budget at a time when the Minister of Health is telling you they need money for to buy mama kits to supply to hospitals where mothers are dying. At the time when the Uganda Blood Transfusion Service is telling you they only need 6 billion to be able to collect adequate blood. But you have a president who has a donation budget that keeps on increasing every other financial year, and it does not stop from that. Even now you have a speaker and the deputy speaker who also have donation budgets. And we have not had an opportunity to look at all the other ministries, probably the officials also in the ministries who actually have donation budgets. So why are we budgeting for donations at the time when the country needs resources? You know, when you start budgeting for donations, it's like you're taking from the taxpayer with one hand and pretending to give them back. Because this money that is being budgeted for in terms of donation is actually taxpayers' money. For me, my argument is, if you're a leader worth your name, you should be able to donate from your pocket. That's the essence of donation. You know, you are superior by virtue of your office, by virtue of how much you earn, and therefore, as the public looks up to you, you should be donating from your pocket,
Or
from what you earn.
If you're donating taxpayers' money,
You're
you should
donating
actually
taxpayers' money.
have the poster there that
For
from
me-
the people of Uganda.
Yeah, but this is one of the things that actually amuses me a lot when we are reported as journalists. You see people writing, President Yoweri Museveni donates 2 billion. That's taxpayers' money, because he's picking it from that allocation which was actually made.
Okay.
So we need to rethink also the issue of budgeting for donations.
Thank
we
you,
really
Anderson.
need to be having
Yes.
donations. Then lastly, there's something that I have sensed, and I had Julius talking about it some time back, what they call budgeting for corruption. You know, people sit, they put in the budget figures money that they know that they will have to share at a certain point. Probably that's why you hear MPs have been given, each MP has been given 50 million, 100 million. Just ask yourself, where is that money coming from? When they actually told us the budget was not enough. You get it? So I think it's something that you need to interrogate. There are people who sit somewhere. Julius, I see you sitting with the people of Minister of Finance under the Budget Transparency Initiative. And you need to interrogate that issue, the possibility of actually budgeting over and above what an institution needs, because someone else at point B is going to come and pick that money.
Thank you, Joyce. Your quick thoughts, Joyce.
I mean, quickly is, I agree with Kenneth is talking about how, to what extent should we trust our parliament to do its job. And whereas they have tried, but I think they're still below average on what we want as a country, because there are things that happen that they need to fix really, especially when it comes to the budget process. The budget for parliament is a very big issue. It is very secretive. They never debate it on the House. A document comes to members of Parliament, Legal Affairs Committee. It is debated and withdrawn. So we've not had an opportunity to actually scrutinize the parliamentary budget. Above all, the parliamentary budget is one of the statutory expenses. So even as they are spending, nobody is scrutinizing how they are spending their money. So they are out there, and the worst still is that they are not doing the right things, because when we see things that are coming out of Parliament, they are definitely a shocker. Donation, actually, the donation budget is the taxpayers' money. It is from the consolidated fund. And what has happened, actually it used to be only the president. But when you look at the donation budget these days, you find their ministers, the IGP has, the person in charge of prisons also has. I saw some in IGG. Almost each and every voter now has got a donation budget. But let me tell you why. It's because agencies are finding it difficult to implement some items that are likely to be thrown out. So you hide everything under donation budget. Donation budget, you can't even account for it. You give out money. Even the Prime Minister, when you see the Prime Minister around giving out money, that's a donation budget. You can't even account for that because it was a donation as long as you live within your budget limit. So the budgeting system needs now to come back, and we provide criteria for a donation budget. Should we even be having a donation budget when Moroto does not have, is not functioning, it has no fridge for a mortuary? Would you be discussing about a donation budget? Would you be discussing about a donation budget when you don't have blood in your hospitals? Would you be discussing about the donation budget when some of your water points are not functional? So that, I think this is the point I wish Ugandans would understand, that our problem is not lack of money. Our problem is where to spend it. So we end up now say, let's put the money on donations. So you can see the challenge that, it's not a challenge, but I think the lack of understanding on what really is a challenge for this country to be addressed. Budgeting for corruption, I think for me is, this is where corruption is being legalized. You know, it's becoming like apartheid. You know, apartheid, it was legal, but very awful. Same thing with our budget. You know, we do not have a fixed price list for government services. So it's a blank check. You can just go in and say, I have this service and this is the cost. And the government will pay for it because there is nothing that is guiding them. But our engagement have seen, I think, in the last meeting that actually the national service standards have been developed and finished, and the national price is also on its way being to be finalized. But for me, in Uganda, when everything is work in progress, I always know that this work might not be going on. So yes, I think we need that. We need a price list. How much does the government of Uganda buy a pen, a vehicle, a computer, and the standard? Because you see, you can't say I need an i10 computer when you have no money. An i5 can still work for you and do the same work. It's like civil servants. All they need to is buy those high-grade vehicles, but still a Raum will take you from home up to your office. You could save money if you have approved national service delivery standards and also a price list.
Thank you, Julius. I think let's take this other question. We have about 9 minutes to go.
Okay.
Thank you for the discussion. Called Asawadel. My concern is the remedial approach, what we need. Because I believe next year, around the same period of the year, budgeting cycle,
shall be here.
I still believe that we shall have similar concerns being raised. The issues of the abuse on things like gender. I mean, these are mistakes. Ministry of Finance knows that these are items we need to look at. But from where you sit, Julius, I believe in your space you have people who have the resource muscle, especially in terms of the remedies that we need. How do we get out of here? Because I believe people who are watching us, many, those who want to hear the remedies and how do we cure these things, and maybe the Ministry of Finance and the other technocrats, they know this is a song that is going to be on, we shall walk out of here, and they'll go back to the script. So from where you sit, what do we need, and what solutions are maybe being mooted from where you sit? And to cure the big elephant in the room. I believe all this that we are talking about stems from one word, indiscipline.
Thank you.
I'll take one more question before I come back to Julius, if there is any. Okay.
Sorry, just very quick. Can I project? Julius, I forgot to ask this. When we look at the absorption, the low absorption, where is the problem exactly? Is it procurement? Is it lack of feasibility studies? Is it an accounting officer who maybe just doesn't care? Because there is a blame game around these three areas. So have you been able, through your budgeting work, establish where the problem could stem from?
Okay.
Thank you.
I think the first question, I think it's a good question. How do we enforce physical discipline as citizens? Because we have the best systems in place. We have the brightest people running our government. If you go in these ministries, I'm telling you, these people are highly exposed in terms of what we do. But at the same time is that we have this indiscipline in public finance management that is unimaginable. And I think our take is that one is that as citizens of Uganda, we've taken sort of like, we are reserved. We no longer actively engage in these particular processes. So the levels of accountability, of demanding accountability in this country have completely reduced. And intentionally by the policymakers, because it's now a question of ndirawa, how do I take to my people? It's no longer a question of the common good, how do we survive as a nation? So the politics have penetrated and really divided our society to the extent that people now believe that even when you are a very corrupt son of the soil, you are the greatest. And I've said it before, that in some countries, if you are corrupt, even before they know you, you hang yourself. In others, once you are known, they hang you. But in this country, you are praised, please go and even steal more. So that kind of mindset has really promoted fiscal indiscipline in this country. That's why you find people will keep quiet. At the end of the day, they bring a corrigenda. Because corrigendas have been coming, but not in this huge amount. And at the last moment that Parliament has no time to scrutinize it, I believe these expenditures had come in time, Parliament would have thrown out some. But you only have one day to debate and finish. So that kind of state, I think, promotes indiscipline. Indiscipline, I think, fiscal indiscipline is also there simply because I think for us, we think it is the political leadership that can rein on the fiscal indiscipline. Because if you are the person in charge of implementing these policies, but then you are seen to be reluctant to actually enforce them, then nobody is going to implement them. So I think for me, the president really needs to come out and put back the house to order. Because this business, the budgeting will never finish. Even up to now, if you open up, people will still bring new things into the budget. But the budget, that's why we have a process. And the process even has dates. By this day, this should have been finished. But you'll be shocked that you will find agencies that will present a budget of last year in the new financial, simply because it was a cut and paste job, and they forgot to find and replace all the previous financial years with this one. So that kind of work, it tells you much that if you come in front of Parliament with that kind of information and you are reprimanded, you will never do it again. But you can do it first year, in another year you do it, and nobody cares. So that lacks the real among the oversight, and the political group that oversees how we execute the budget is definitely is one of the things that we need to look out for. Raw absorption. There are a number of things, but for me, topmost are three. Number one is corruption. You look at the way we rush to make loans. At the end of the day, it's about the commitment fees and the commissions out of these loans that are paid out, and the rest goes down. So in your mind, you are like, are you interested in paying the commitment fees, or you're interested in having this loan given to us? So that's the question I have always raised, and I think it's high time we look at it. The second one is completely lack of capacity to execute these projects. Completely lack of capacity to execute these projects. Not because we lack it, but the people we put in have not been thoroughly selected for that particular job. If there was that in the government to ensure that it's not the son and daughter of so and so to implement, but the capacity to deliver, we would not be here. We would not be here, because in some of these projects, really, I mean, you get a shock that a project is going to start and there was no visibility study. So who's going to implement that one? The other item on absorption, which we are trying to understand, is it is being alleged right now that monies don't reach the beneficiaries on time. And it's something that we promoted. If you have sent money, stand out in the public and say, today I have sent money. And the Ministry of Finance has done register that for the last 10, 15 years. But now we are being told that even after you have said I've sent money, somebody waits for the money until the month ends. So we want to work with the accountant general to tell us the turnaround time. When do agencies receive money? When is your account credited? Because with the single treasury account system, we can be able to tell who has who has been able to execute those monies and who has not. I think that's very critical. The other important element, I think, for me is lack of absorption, of course, is also the preparedness to execute. Because if you went to start a procurement process at the time when you have received money on the account, then you are in a wrong office. Because procurement takes probably, in a government, it can take more than 12 months. So start the procurement process, finish it up. But on the day of executing the agreement, hold on until the money hits the account. And then you can start that. But if you want to start the procurement process on the day you receive money on the account, I can tell by the time you finish the process of advertising and recruiting people, the month has already gone. And that's what happened to Chirudu. They returned back money for recruitment. There are some hospitals. They returned back money for recruitment because they waited for money to hit the accounts. When the money came, they started the recruitment process. By the time they finished the recruitment process, the financial year had ended. So they returned back money to it. So there are things you want to avoid. That fine, let us prepare ourselves to execute this process, but also want to understand when does Ministry of Finance release money to these agencies. At what point? Does it take a month, or it takes 2 months, or it takes 2 weeks, what they have been telling us, and then we can get the calculate properly.
Great.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this interface. It's the budget talk by CS Bank. Those who have been watching us online, again, we'll be having more of these interfaces going forward, just to help you understand the different items within the budget, and also to pick your minds. I think we'll have a much broader digital feedback picking process or mechanism going forward, because we want to hear from you as well. Again, it's been me, Charles, with Julius from CS Bank. See you next time.
Thank you. Okay. Since this is our first cohort, we can take a photograph, because 10 years down the road, we want to see where Ismail will be.